We're doing the Trump v Zelensky blowout.
But I'm not in politics.
And in the meantime, people are dying on the streets of Ukraine.
Though, you just said,
how many more people have to die so that you can get your sovereignty?
I bring to you Sir Keir. So it's been a while for us. We've not.
It has.
We've been on holidays. We've been seeing people. We've been outside in the wild,
living life.
And in the time that we've been living life, Donald Trump has taken over the U.S. presidency. And so here we are to discuss what the hell is going on in the world right now. Trump, Europe, Zelensky, Keir Starmer. Can't believe his name is up there with world leaders. Anyway, I'm Garcia.
I'm Izzy.
And welcome to Informally Informed. Today we're going to be talking about Trump. Not just Trump, but the world and what's going on in that. Europe, Trump v. Zelensky. Trump v...
Oh, no, all the drama.
Trump v. the world.
Tell you what, it's better than Coronation Street, isn't it?
It's much better than that. We have no Sarah Lou coming out going, I'm pregnant.
Is that your latest reference for Coronation Street?
I don't watch Coronation Street, so that's yeah. That was like 20 odd years ago. At least 20 years, surely. More than
Bethany's
20 years.
Like 25 now, and she was the daughter.
Don't say that. It'll make me. You'll age us.
Okay.
All right. So back to what's going on in the world. So let's start with something simple, shall we?
Are we doing the Trump v Zelensky blowout?
Yeah. Well, Trump hosted Zelensky at the White House in the Oval Office, and it all went a bit Pete Tong.
Did you watch the full 50 minutes?
I still didn't get around to watching it.
Did you not?
I didn't. I just watched clips here and there. So with that, I mean, I've watched around it, so I'm sort of aware of what happened, and not necessarily the finer details. So let's start with the pausing of funds, because that's what's come out of this.
Should we start with the blowout?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Explain what's happened.
So, this is my interpretation of what happened. I watched the full 50 minutes. Zelensky spent the majority of the time rolling his eyes. There was nice moments as well. It was all very civil. For the most part, it was very civil. And to the untrained eye, like, people were saying things like, oh, Zelensky's rolling his eyes. If you actually watch the full 50 minutes, there's no drama until the end. It's not like he's tutting and rolling his eyes every 30 seconds or anything like that. So it's not dramatic. But if you watch him, it's noticeable. And then somebody asked a question. One of the reporters asked Donald Trump a question about J.D. Vance, who'd been silent the entire time. And Donald Trump was like, the man's here, ask him yourself. And then J.D. Vance then went on to say the best way to solve this is with diplomacy, which is hard to argue with. We need to bring both parties to the table. Both sides need to compromise. We need to have some sort of diplomacy in order to reach a settlement and to reach peace. This war's been going on for 3 years, etc., etc. And then Zelensky basically, it's not like he didn't make any valid points. He made valid points in his comeback, but it was the way that he phrased it. He said, Russia has invaded us before. What's to stop him invading in the future?
Which is a good point. What
sort of diplomacy are you talking about? And he came at him with quite a significant amount of attitude. And then J.D. Vance said, I think it's disrespectful for you to come here and effectively give me, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but where's the effect of, and give me attitude? When that's all you've been doing the entire time you've been here, which nobody else is party to, obviously. And then he said, maybe we should have this conversation in private. Which is a good point, because did Zelensky feel the need to ask that question in public?
Why is it a public setting anyway?
It was a press conference. They are public settings. All the meetings had happened in private. This was a press conference for the public. So
I understand that, but the trade deal hadn't been signed. None of those things had happened. So this is where the confusion for me is.
This leads me to the conclusion that the peace deal was never going to get signed, because it wasn't a press conference to sign the agreement. I think they'd failed to sort of reach any sort of agreement prior to that. Then they'd done a press conference.
So I am back in Europe in this battle because we geographically live in Europe.
I'm backing whoever can bring peace to the Russia-Ukraine
Of
situation.
course, I want peace, but I don't want peace at the expense of the Ukraine sovereignty, because much like Britain,
What do
France,
you mean by that?
and the Allied, I'm gonna get there. Much like the Allied powers in before World War II kicked off, appeasement doesn't work. They've not learnt from history that appeasement doesn't work. So where I understood what Zelensky was saying from the clips that I watched, which is we need more than just appeasing Russia. So you saying, well, we give you our minerals, because Ukraine is rich in natural resources, then you will have people in the ground, and then that way, if Russia then attacks, then it's no. In that particular case, they'd still have to give up their minerals for nothing. Because at the I say
For
nothing. No,
for the
I know.
500 million.
I say nothing, but obviously they're being backed by America.
Europe got I'm not sure what, but I know Europe got something in return. It was a loan. It wasn't an outright, we're just going to give you money like
exactly,
it was with
but
the
it is
US.
a loan. But
with the US it wasn't. With the US it was just, we're going to give you this money.
Because they were backing it on.
So to give a loan or whatever, or to get something in return, that's what Europe are doing.
Zelensky is a president at war. Okay, the idea that he's given Vance, I don't buy this, that he should come humble and all the rest of it. I understand what this is. It's diplomacy. There's money involved. It's all the rest of it. But he's still a president of a country at war. What do they expect? JD Vance also said in that interview that, well, actually it was a separate interview afterwards, the 60 Minutes interview, where he talks about the people fighting wars when they haven't fought wars in 40 years or something like that. The Ukraine are currently fighting a war. They've had people on the ground die. They've had millions of their own people die. What he's proposing...
JD Vance wasn't talking about Ukraine, though, was he?
No, he wasn't in that particular sense. He didn't mention anyone specific.
I know.
The UK took umbrage to that, but that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about in terms of what they get in return. Okay, they're gonna get more over a series of years by giving up minerals in the Ukraine than they would be getting to fend off this war, providing the war doesn't go on for much longer. I understand that Donald Trump wants peace, and I want peace. I think we can all agree that we just spoke about this in a previous video. We all agree that human life is what's important here.
Getting Zelensky to sacrifice some stuff, getting Putin to sacrifice some stuff.
For me, Zelensky's already sacrificed
hang on. Let
too
me
much.
Finish. For Zelensky to sacrifice some stuff, for Putin to sacrifice some stuff, and making sure that Donald Trump's successors aren't going to just allow Putin to invade again, to stop that, to de-incentivize Russia from invading Ukraine again by giving the US an invested interest to make sure that Ukraine doesn't get invaded again.
But then the US can't have it both ways.
To give Russia the impression, let me finish, to give Russia the impression that if they go into Ukraine would be a direct assault on the United States, it's going to make them think twice.
No, I'm sorry, but that's all conjuncture. America there's no proof in this pudding. It's all conjuncture. And the fact that they want... I'm not in world politics. I don't have a solution. But I do know that I don't see how this is a solution, because Russia holds all the cards here. And I think Trump actually came out and said that. Trump actually came out and said that, because I've got the quote here. He came out and said that Russia holds all the cards. So it wouldn't be prudent to negotiate with the Ukraine. That's what he said. That's what he said. That's what I quoted. Russia does hold all the cards. Basically?
So is it
what
prudent
we're doing here is playing around with full-out war, full-blown war. Because let's say Russia doesn't take heed, and then they go into Ukraine and they invade. They have hit NATO forces. I don't like these war games. These war games that they're playing around with people's lives. That's what it comes down to
Who's
me.
they? Russia.
The powers that be.
Ukraine.
Russia, America, and the Ukraine. Europe especially. Europe needs to secure its own borders. What we should be doing at this point is taking the US out of the equation, which is what Trump's trying to do anyway. So I'm backing that.
Sure. But it comes down to what else is the alternative. It's like you said, Russia holds all the... You want peace, but not at the extent of sovereignty. Okay, here's the next question. How many more people have to die so that you can get your sovereignty?
Russia is an entire sovereign nation.
I'm talking about Ukraine.
The Ukraine is also an entire sovereign nation. We're not in a land grab era anymore. There has to be another way.
Kind of are.
We seem to be going back into that.
Like, if you look at Yugoslavia,
Rwanda,
that was in the 21st century. There have been so many Crimea. There have been so many different border changes.
Was a part of the Ukraine that Russia annexed.
I'm aware of that.
So this is what I'm trying to say. Russia's expansion.
That's what I'm saying. Crimea used to be a part of Ukraine. Now it's a part of Russia.
It's still a part of the Ukraine. I'm not enjoying this expansionist war games that these leaders are playing, because I have this as one of my point. Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of Defense, okay, he is quoted as saying
of which country?
Of the United States, as saying there will not be US troops deployed to the Ukraine. Fine. Any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. I agree. They should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission. It's too early to say that's what he said. That it should be deployed as a non-NATO mission. For me, it's too early to say that such a force could exist, because Russia could see any act towards this, or any act towards a non-NATO troop deployment to the ground, as an act of war.
Yes.
Which would create war on the continent anyway. So
Europe's not innocent in this.
Europe is not innocent in this at all.
Continual expansion of NATO and various other bits and bobs.
NATO was supposed to be a deterrent. NATO has become a power play, a piece on a chessboard in these war games. So,
and they get involved. Just look at what happened in Yugoslavia. They get involved.
Yeah, but like you said, in terms of like what you asked before, what do I think should be done? Not this. Not putting in not putting in non-NATO troops on the ground, because that's playing with fire. So Europe.
We think there should be NATO troops on the ground.
I think that Europe needs to come up with a European force that is, you're either in fully or you're not.
And therein lies the point, right? Because so far, what Joe Biden did, what Europe did, was they gave Ukraine just enough money so that they wouldn't lose, and not enough money for them to win.
Yep.
They just prolonging this endless war. And the best... And it's all well and good saying that we don't know. Nothing has been televised between Putin and Donald Trump. We've got no idea what's going on behind closed doors.
No, we don't.
And we can sit here and we can guess till the cows come home.
Of course.
But the mainstream media have absolutely no more of an idea than we do.
No.
So you have no... It's all well and good them saying they're capitulating to Putin. You don't know that. You've got no idea that, for all we know, Donald Trump could have phoned him up and said, do what I say, I'm going to nuke the Kremlin. Probably hasn't. But he could have done for all we know. Right? So we've got no idea what Putin has or hasn't agreed to. And Donald Trump has made it very clear that both sides need to make sacrifices.
On that point, though, for me...
And I don't agree. I don't think that is the way that it should be. I think in an ideal world, Ukraine should get to keep all of the land that Putin took off them. Putin should go back to where we get... But we don't live in an ideal
Of
world.
course not. But we live in a
We're
realistic
way
one.
past that.
But the Ukraine, all right.
And I think
on this hand,
Zelensky's still living in that idealistic world.
I also agree there, but I also think it's easy to do that because he's lost millions of his people. So the way that I'm looking at this right now is that the
he
Ukraine
doesn't seem to want me doing anything to stop him from dying.
the way that I'm looking at it is that the Ukraine is Europe's problem. But it's impossible for them to create any security guarantees without what they're calling an American backstop. Okay? So this then means that Europe remains a limp man. Because it cannot actually do anything. So
Without the US.
Without the US backing, without US military input, most of the systems that the Europe as a whole runs is actually reliant on America. But I'll get to that when we come to the UK, because don't even get me started on Keir. But it's impossible to do any of these things without the US. But the US keep trying to back away. Let them back off and see what we can do. Because at this moment, Europe has been rearming, but Europe let itself become weak. And so now it can't do anything.
And reliant.
Shall we move on?
Shall we move on to the UK? I was just going to say
Yeah,
that.
so I bring
Keir?
to you... Yes, I bring to you Keir Starmer. And is...
To me, indeed.
I bring to you Sir Keir.
The jury will hear, Sir Keir.
Sir Keir, the annoying one, Keir Starmer,
The granny hammer.
was called out by J.D. Vance. No, he was caught in a lie on free speech.
That was... Did you watch that clip?
I did watch the clip. He was caught
Where somebody
in a
asked JD
terrible
Vance.
lie.
Somebody asked JD Vance directly in a press conference in the Oval Office with Keir Starmer sat right there about free speech in the UK, and JD Vance was like, the UK doesn't have free speech. It's arresting people for being wrong on the internet.
J.D. Vance is right. The UK does not have free speech.
And he then went on to say, look, the UK is its own country, can do what it wants, but when it starts to affect American citizens via online bills, when it starts to affect American companies, that's when we got a problem. And then Keir Starmer gave some wet-ass answer.
It was lame.
About, we're very proud of the free speech in our country.
What free speech? Okay. On that point, I bring to you a headline from the Telegraph. Okay, of all places, the fucking Telegraph. But the Telegraph is what
I
I'm
don't mind
quoting.
the Telegraph, to be fair.
Detectives accused of acting like Orwellian thought police as they doorstep Gran for slamming Labour councillors on Facebook. Free speech, my ass. People are terrified to post on social media because of things like this. So what free speech are they talking about? The free speech that got people arrested after the Southport riots? I will raise my own point and say that the Online Safety Act, which came into effect in October 2023, this is the power this is the act that gave police the power to go and thought police the shit out of people. The Online Safety Act forces tech companies to become the thought police with government backing. Since October 2023, when the law came into effect, 292 people have been charged with online speech crimes, or as they called, communication offences. Of the 292, 67 have been convicted.
So,
you better be careful what you say, Izzy. Don't want Keir coming knocking at my door.
he'd send one of his minions.
He said a minion, of course he would.
Konstantin Kisin.
He's not coming to the north.
Konstantin Kisin throws out a statistical lot that I did fact check when I first heard it, but he's repeated it several times in a lot of interviews. He's obviously Russian. He said that in Russia, about 400 people a year get arrested for things that they say, because obviously Russia doesn't have free speech. In the UK, that figure's about 3,000.
So,
And this is the thing. I've said this to you before. This is the thing that gets me. Everyone in Russia. I mean, obviously in Russia, they know that if they say something against the government, they're going to get arrested for it. So that's probably plays a part in the disparity there. Obviously, people are less willing to do that. But here's the thing: everyone in Russia knows. Nobody in the UK knows. Everyone in
No.
Russia knows the police are corrupt. Everyone in Russia knows that the government's corrupt. Nobody in England knows that.
No, then a lot of people aren't even aware of the Online Safety Act. No one is named a Safety Act, but it does anything but.
So JD Vance calling out Keir Starmer, total win.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
And you know what? They're so ideologically driven. They're gonna go deep. They're just gonna deny it. They're gonna go furthermore ideologically driven down the rabbit hole.
But Keir Starmer actually sitting there with a straight face saying we're proud of our free speech in the UK. The people of the UK can't say that because we'll get arrested. Can't write shit about him online. It's unbelievable. Anyway, back to what. Oh,
didn't he turn up to the Oval Office? Was it the day after Zelensky left?
It was the day after Zelensky left. But yeah, so Keir, fuck you, Keir, has released in a statement saying, following this press secretary saying, we stand with Ukraine for however long it takes. Is that not the statement?
That's stupid. That's ridiculous. How many people are going to have to die? How much more money are you going to plough in to a stalemate?
The UK is in a state of inflation to the point where everything's expensive. Everything's expensive in the UK. We cannot afford basic things. Yet, Keir will send billions to the Ukraine.
And here's the other thing. If he's planning on... Because there was talk at one point about Keir Starmer wanting to conscript people.
Yes.
This is the thing. Back in the late 1930s, back in 1914, the government was very concerned about the number of volunteers they were going to get when they put it out for volunteer. If you want to sign up for the war, blah, 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 blah. There were so many people turned out to volunteer. They were so surprised because people wanted to be able to go out and fight and die for their country.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to 2025, when house prices are sky high, the economy is crumbling. The government is arresting you for disagreeing with you politically. That's not going to happen this time.
People have also seen how the returned military were treated when they came back from Iraq and Afghanistan.
We don't live in those times anymore. No one is going to step forward to want to fight a foreign war in another country. It's like the Iraq war all over again. There's going to be protests in the street. I think it's all talk. My personal opinion is that it's all talk, and I don't think Keir Starmer's really going to send British troops. I mean, he might.
Well, the EU...
He's definitely not going to conscript anyone.
On Sunday, the 3rd or something like that, the EU had an emergency summit. And out of that came what Keir called the Coalition of the Willing. These are European nations that would be willing to put ground troops into the Ukraine to bolster this war. Of this...
To keep this war going.
Of this,
for
so
no
far,
reason when Donald Trump's trying to end it.
Poland and Germany, Germany's the biggest economy in Europe, have already stated that they are unwilling to send troops. The Baltic countries and Finland, who are on the border, have already stated that they are focused on bolstering their own defences.
Fair play.
Which is fair. I
100%.
think that's fair. I think this is the thing, though. Geographically, we are in Europe. If a war erupts in Europe, it doesn't necessarily affect us. Not in the same way because we're an island. However, it will affect us. So we need to decide if we're going to be taking giant leaps forward into this war or not. Because something needs to happen here.
We shouldn't.
We can't go... No, I don't think we should. The UK can't afford to go to war. The people are already broke.
And Donald Trump is trying to force the Europeans to not go to war with Ukraine. That's what he's doing with the tariffs and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fair.
But again, though, appeasement doesn't work because we did that with Hitler and it didn't work then. So
I don't think that's what he's doing. I don't think that's what he's doing.
I don't think that that's what he's doing, but I think that that's the road that Europe's going down. Is appeasement
to who?
To the Kremlin. They're not sending in troops. They're not doing any. They don't.
Oh.
Do you see what I mean? They're just slowly, little monkey away. But that's not gonna work. They haven't learned from. Okay, so I play a lot of Civilization, right? It's a strategy war game. Play a lot of Civilization. Don't judge me. It is what it is. If you stand back and you let war come to your borders, there'll be no ground. You'll be making up ground forever. Okay? Instead, what you need to do is meet war where it started. Do not let it come to your shores. Once it comes to your shores,
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I think that but this is it. I would love it not to happen, but the fight talk that Keir's going, Keir is a dickhead, bro.
Right, you think that if left to his own devices, Vladimir Putin would just take over the entirety of Europe, one country at a time?
No, I think he'd go back for the Balkan states, the states that were originally part of the USSR.
I don't
Vladimir
think
Putin has come back and said that he wants to take back those lands because they were originally Russian, even though that's not how that worked.
He said he wanted to take back the land in the Ukraine.
No, and the Baltics, which is now separate countries. Czechia.
You mean Latvia, Lithuania?
Yeah, yeah, all those Baltic ones. But
Estonia.
Estonia, that's the one. But also in other news, other news, but relevant news, there is currently a civil war brewing in Serbia. The ethnic Serbs. Europe cannot afford to fight multiple wars.
Europe can't afford to lose Donald Trump, and so when he's trying to get a peace deal negotiated, and they're deliberately trying to usurp him at every turn, and he's like, "Don't do that, or I'm gonna pull all my troops out." You're going against, like, you're trying to prolong war when I'm trying to end war. If the US fucks off and leaves Europe to its own devices, Europe's fucked. If war breaks out, Europe's fucked.
But I said this at the beginning.
So in the whole Trump to Europe thing, I'm on Team Trump, 100%.
I'm on Team Europe, but Team Europe need to step up their game, because at this point we're not even. Well, actually, to be fair, most of Europe have hit the NATO spending.
Team Europe,
but they're nothing without America, and
the vast majority of Team Europe are being run by a bunch of ideological idiots
who can't seem to agree on anything. Too many chiefs.
It's not even about whether they agree or not. It's about them making stupid decisions and threatening to put troops in the Ukraine and arguing with Donald Trump about ridiculous things and trying to prolong a war, giving them money for this ridiculous stalemate that's going on, calling Vladimir Putin all names under the sun, and then calling Donald Trump out for not calling Vladimir Putin all names under the sun. But of course he's not going to do that, because that's not how you negotiate peace deals, by slagging people off in public.
But as I said,
and
Europe,
being all nicety to them to their face. That's not how
Europe doesn't have real
works.
force. It's old and it's under-equipped. It's under-trained and it's leaking money due to inflation. Europe can't afford a war. Europe hasn't got any real power to speak of.
I don't think there's going to be a war in Europe. There might be one in Serbia. A civil war in Serbia. The war in Ukraine, Russia might continue, but it's certainly going to get any closer to us. I don't believe that.
I hope not. And I hope that Europe continues to rearm and have learnt from this and continue to learn from this, so that in 50 years we'll be in a better position. You cannot expect to make decisions when you're the weaker opponent in this.
Germany are now turning around and debating whether or not they should get nuclear weapons.
Yes, I'm aware. So Germany called for Europe to share.
That's the other thing. Donald Trump, the United States has nuclear weapons based in Germany.
Yeah, but they're not.
They're US, they're not German. So Germany has no nuclear weapons. There's only 7 countries in the world that have nuclear weapons. Only 7. UK and France are the only 2 in Europe.
Yeah. So Germany has called for Europe to share the nuclear deterrent. France has already come out and shot down that idea and says that the French arsenal is for France. I understand where France are going with this. Germany's right next door. If there's a nuclear situation, it won't matter. The French are still for the French.
Yeah.
This is the joys of a landmass. It ain't gonna matter. Yeah, so there will be a further conference at some point to discuss the EU's involvement in Ukraine.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's, to be honest, I think that it's a lot of hype over not a whole lot of action. I think is the basic bottom line, and I think the mainstream media have whipped it up more than what it actually is. Let's take as an example that 60-minute interview of JD Vance where he said something like, well, it's better than some random country in Europe who hasn't fought a war in 30 years trying to send troops in or whatever, which is a valid point.
Not the UK. We were in the yeah.
The only reason we know that 60-minute interview even happened because the mainstream media decided that we should watch that clip.
Yeah.
And that's why we watched that clip, because the mainstream media decided that it was a clip that we needed to watch. It doesn't mean anything about anything. It's all well and good, the mainstream media, but they're controlling this entire narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you agree with them or whether you don't agree with them, they are controlling the narrative. They're deciding what things you should watch, what things you shouldn't watch.
We did an episode on social media. Go back and watch this.
They took a 30-second clip about him saying something and just sensationalized it. If they'd have taken another 30-second clip from, I don't know, Merz in Germany or whatever, and sensationalized that, that's what we would be talking about right now.
Can I just say, you asked me earlier what I think we should do, Europe should do. And
I asked you what you thought the solution to the war was. I might have asked you the other question as well, but that's what I remember.
So what I think the solution to the war should be, and I've seen it floated around, but not really in like serious conversation, is that there needs to be a peacekeeping mission, not necessarily a United Nations one, because the United Nations are even worse equipped than Europe, but somewhere in the southern hemisphere that's nothing to do with us, somewhere like India, to send troops into the Ukraine for peacekeeping, so that there's no escalation of this war. A third party that has nothing to do with it, because India is swiftly becoming a world superpower, and they are desperate to get their troops.
What do you mean by peacekeeping?
Peacekeeping, to go and send...
Fight?
Not necessarily to fight, but to get Russia...
What if somebody attacks them, what are they just going to do, stand there and wave their flags? No.
No, but it takes out the risk of a NATO... of a triggering of the NATO... of Article 5. That's what I'm trying to do here, is take out the risk of the triggering of the NATO alliance. Because any kind of ground troops that Europe sends in will trigger that. If America sends troops in, it will also trigger that. We need a third party that has nothing to do with the NATO alliance. So that's what I would do, is send
So you don't think sitting down and banging two people's heads together to sign the deal is going to work?
Mediators that isn't America, and a mediator that has nothing to do with the war. That's
why would if Putin's got one side, and this is the thing, people keep. So there was an interview. Somebody asked Zelensky, "How do you feel about the fact that when asked whose side he was on, Donald Trump refused to answer the question?" And Zelensky obviously wasn't happy that he didn't say, "I'm on Ukraine's side."
This is politics. You can't say that.
You can't say that. But here's the thing. America is on nobody's side because, make it what you will, Donald Trump is the president.
They are on NATO's side.
Is Donald Trump.
They are on NATO's side.
They're in NATO.
They're in
that
NATO.
Doesn't mean that Donald Trump specifically.
No,
he was
it doesn't.
Directly.
But there are deals already in place that would... Look, NATO's not going to disappear overnight. And even if... right now, as things stand, currently this day, if America sends troops or even civilians in... No, I'm saying that if they do, or for whatever reason, and Russia attacks, that would trigger Article 5. If Europe sends in troops or whatever, their alliance of the willing and stupid, send troops in to do this, it would trigger.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I don't care whether they're Indian.
I'm saying that we need a third
European
party.
or US. Sending troops in is not a good idea, period. I think there needs to be someone. A peace negotiation needs to be made.
Mm.
Both sides need to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine needs assurances that Putin's not just going to wait for Trump to leave office.
How do they
do
do this
again.
without the American backstop?
What do you mean by without? You mean without the money?
The American backstop? Yeah, without the threat that if you do this, America's going to come big daddy in.
By giving America a vested interest in Ukraine.
I don't agree. I don't agree. I do not want America further into Europe. America, as they've made themselves world police and then now want to take a step back.
Hang on a second. I don't agree with that point.
Okay.
And I'll explain why. I agree that America are world police. But America made themselves the most powerful country in the world. There's always going to be a most powerful country in the world.
Of course, but it's also a tier list.
Sure. Whoever's the most powerful country in the world automatically becomes world police, whether they want it or not. Just look at.
But now
the UK was the most powerful country in the world.
But they're taking a step back.
They were going out and arresting slavers and doing all that kind of thing.
They're taking a step back. So take a step back.
Then I don't think that's what he's doing.
He's just stopped paused the funding and intelligence. He is taking a step. If that's not a step back, I don't know what that is.
That's a strategy. That's a power play. That is him saying, "This. Listen to this. Donald Trump. Don't take my words for it. This is what he said, right? Donald Trump said we are temporarily pausing all funding to Ukraine until Zelensky is ready to talk about peace deals."
So he's blackmailing Zelensky into doing what he wants. And essentially, this
the peace.
Do you remember what I said before?
Zelensky. It's not about Putin. It's about the lives.
What I said before. But this is about the people of the Ukraine would not be happy. I don't think with after fighting this war to just take whatever Trump says. When interviewed, because I've been watching a lot of interviews of various different things, people are now where Russia's become pro-American, and the rest of Europe has become very anti-American.
I think that's based on the mainstream media outlet.
And yeah,
I don't think that's actually true.
The perception. It's based on perception. And lens.
But optics don't mean a whole lot when you're trying to end a war.
True, but optics, they do mean a whole lot because it's the people.
I think Zelensky is unwilling to compromise. And I'm not saying he should. In an ideal world, he shouldn't have to, but we don't live in an ideal world.
I think that
this war needs to come to an end. It's all well.
If I was Ukrainian, I'd be backing Zelensky.
Okay, so one of my friends' sons is high up in the Ukrainian army. Is high up in the Ukrainian army, and every time I speak to her, she's like, "He doesn't care about land. He just wants this to end. I just want this to end. We're done. We just want the war to end. Fuck the land. We just want the war to." And that's what all of my friends are saying in the Ukraine. And you know what? If people were dropping bombs on my head, if I was down in Cornwall and people were dropping, or whatever, or you lived in, it's all well and good saying, "Oh, you'd back Zelensky," but when he's going out of his way to avoid signing any sort of peace deal and is looking for funding to continue this war,
just because you cannot dress things up as a peace deal and say, "Well, yeah, this is what it is because Donald Trump wants it." You're not going to convince me.
Donald Trump wants it. You don't want a peace deal.
I want a peace deal. I don't want a peace deal like this, and you're not going to convince me that this is the best way forward. There has to be a way in which everybody gets what they want. In this way, America get what they want, and the Ukraine get what's left. Once America goes in and steals the minerals, they get what's left.
Ukraine has got a great deal out of the United States, number one. Number two, it's not stealing. And number three, Europe asked for collateral. Why shouldn't America?
What collateral did Europe ask for? Because I've not read that anywhere.
It was a loan.
Yeah, it's a loan to be repaid by an economy that's not quite there. So if there is no Ukraine, they don't have to pay back that loan.
But they will end up paying back the loan. So when I think that it's a good.
And what happens when Russia ignores all of this and annexes Ukraine as a country? Then what?
if that happens. So what do you think should happen? That's what it comes down to.
I already,
you have no better solution.
I don't have a better solution, but I don't agree with that one. But that's okay, because we don't have to agree.
Nobody has a better solution.
But I'm not in politics.
And in the meantime, people are dying on the streets of Ukraine.
Though, you just said this, that we don't know what happens behind closed doors. People are dying everywhere. People are dying everywhere in multiple wars across the world. Okay, people die.
We're talking about this war.
But I'm saying that if you said before that it's a power play, this is what I'm talking about. These power games. You've just said that the lives of people, it's what's being. This war could have ended last week.
Who's doing the power play at this point?
You just said Trump's doing a power play.
Yeah, he's using it as a strategy to get Zelensky to come to the table.
To get Zelensky to get him his Nobel Peace Prize.
To get an end to the war.
Okay, well,
Donald Trump has been very anti-war for 50 years.
We've just been going around in circles for the same argument for the past 5 minutes. So can we end it here?
Yeah, we've been going for 40 minutes.
Great.
Did you want to mention Norway?
No, it was just briefly to touch on what other countries are also doing in Europe. Finland is bolstering. Ireland haven't actually said anything yet. The Romanians are firmly on the side of the Russians. The Azerbaijanians are currently in problems with Russia. So is Kazakhstan.
I don't know anything about what's going on over in Asia.
Over in that side of the world. And we'll see what Erdogan has to say after this, because I hear that Turkey has got a vested interest in this too.
Everybody's got a
vested interest. So with that,
I think it's a bit over dramatized. Is my final point. I think that I'm not saying that Europe shouldn't arm up. I think every country should arm up. You know, strength is the best defense, is the best deterrent. But realistically, I'm not convinced that Russia's going to do anything past Ukraine. And I think this war's going to continue for a while unless some sort of peace deal is worked out. And there doesn't seem to be any alternative because it's been tried for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I guess my final word is that I think that if Trump is going to stay out of Europe, he should just stay out of Europe and let Europe deal with whatever's happening. Come hell or high water. Anyway, so with that, join us in conversation here. Let us know what you think. What do you think about Trump's first... Is it 3 months yet? Or is it still 2?
40-something days.
Yeah, so 40-something days.
20th of January. Yeah, it's only a month and it's only 6 weeks. Yeah,
6 weeks. First 6 weeks of power. Let us know your thoughts on the matter.
There's been high times, there's been some low times, but the one thing it hasn't been is boring. Which is what it was for the majority of Joe Biden's term, because they did nothing.
I prefer the boring. Anyway, join us next time.
See you then.
See you then. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of our views. That's the point of the conversation. Join in.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.